All right. Well, there's a few news articles I thought were interesting. There's a lot of them. In New York City, electric bicycles are catching fire, and it's causing a big problem. There have been like dozens of fires caused by them. The problem is these batteries overheat and catch fire, and they're hard to put out. And man, I've seen some videos of Teslas on fire, and they're really hard to put out. They say these e-bikes just have a pack of AA cells, is what's actually in an e-bike battery, and they tend to short out and catch fire and make a mess. So they're trying to ban them from public housing, but that would be a real hardship for all the people who are making a living, eking out a small wage by delivering on these electric bikes. So they're trying to figure out if maybe there's a safer way to store them or a safer way to charge them so that they won't catch fire so often. But we're going to have a lot more trouble like this as we all move to electric vehicles. There's one of these at City College in one of the other classrooms. If you want to filter the air, there was a bunch of teachers that had students who were having asthma attacks from dust in the air, and they decided to fix it. All you do is take a bunch of filters and build a cube, and then just put a fan on one side, and it will suck the air through the filters. And yep, electric bikes, yeah, I think anything electric tends to catch fire. I remember when all the laptops would catch fire on airplanes and stuff, and people were freaking out about that. Those lithium batteries, if you try to put too much charge in them, they build dendrites of lithium and they short out. So there's a natural tension there, and so some of them do catch fire. So there are a couple stories about this thing called FogReveal, which I've heard about for years, not this exact product, but the general idea. If you have an app on your phone, like one was a pizza app. Yeah, the Dell laptop has floating batteries. Just a comment about that. Maybe when you had, if you put on a Papa John's pizza app, Papa John's knows everywhere you go all the time. He knows your location, and they keep track of it, and they made commercials tracking where the Papa John's customers go, and that data is collected and sold to anybody that wants to buy it, and the police can buy it, and then they can track everybody. And apparently they have this thing called FogReveal that is leased primarily to police departments, and they tried to keep it secret, but the EFF and some other and Associated Press found it and did a whole bunch of analysis and found out that police departments are using it without a warrant, and it tracks everybody's your location by advertiser ID, which is the unique identifier on your phone, and they say it's legal because it doesn't tell them who you are, but all they have to do is follow, and they'll see you go home, they'll see you go to work, so they can easily figure out who you are. And they're using it to do screening for people that were near a location of a crime and everything else, and they've been using it for years. People pay like $7,000 for a police department to subscribe to the service, and then they say it is a fantastic tool. They can totally get a lot of information about crimes with it, which I imagine is true. And yet the privacy advocates, of course, say this is an outrageous violation of the Fourth Amendment and so on. So anyway, the first thing is, I guess, to be aware that it exists, and the next thing I would imagine would be some lawsuits about it or something. Anyway, I think we've all heard rumors about this in various detail. I think the only new thing here is that there is a specific tool to make it easy to do this. This thing called FogReveal is apparently the user-friendly, affordable tool to make it easy to get that data. And they have a partnership with one of the data brokers, so they have a discount rate to get access to all the data. So I remember this more than a year ago. Florida requested that the Biden administration would let them import drugs from Canada to make the drugs cheaper. And then nothing happened for 500 days, in fact 600 days, so now they've sued the Biden administration saying, all right, we've asked for this, why haven't you done it? Our people here are paying too much for their prescriptions, and it seems like he's got a pretty good point. So maybe that lawsuit will motivate the Biden administration to move on that. And so people are criticizing Mark Zuckerberg quite a lot. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan and talked about how hard his life was, and how it's such a drag to run Facebook because everybody complains all the time, and Meta's a lot more fun. And they talk about, he's generally held up as an example of the wrong way to be a CEO. The point is he has a special dual-class shareholder in his corporation, so he can never be fired, which violates the whole principle of American corporate governance. You're supposed to have a board of directors, and the board of directors serve the shareholders. And the board of directors appoint the CEO, and if the CEO makes bad decisions, they fire the CEO and appoint another one. And that way there's the corporation is supposed to do whatever would provide the best profit for the shareholders. That's the American corporate model. But at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg is just a king that can never be dethroned. So I'm not even sure why they have a board of directors if they even have one. So anyway, they're talking about it. They say all the other people around him that show any inclination of strength or leadership just leave, and he's left alone running the place with nobody questioning his decisions, which is the way a lot of modern American tech corporations work. They sort of worship a founder and appoint him a king and just do whatever he says, like Elon Musk. And various people of the old-fashioned type don't like that model. Just a sec, I'm going to move something that's reflecting the light in my eyes. Another shiny thing here. Anyway, Facebook is generally regarded as a poorly run company, and I think we're probably going to see a huge disaster as he keeps pushing this metaverse that doesn't seem to be any good at all. The graphics are terrible. Nobody wants it. No, that's the interesting point, Mobo. Normally, a corporation sells shares and the shareholders vote on things, and if enough of the shareholders don't like what's happening, they can vote against it, but not at Facebook. There's dual class shares, and Mark holds the shares that have voting power, and the other people just get a share of the profit, but they do not get the ability to vote him out. So, yes, in a normal shareholder, you have normal stock, public company. If somebody buys 51% of the stock, they can perform a hostile takeover, throw out the board, and take over the company, but not Facebook. Yeah, Zuck took a big gamble on the metaverse, and well, he hasn't lost yet. I mean, he claims they're still working on metaverse and it's going to be wonderful. Most people think it's a disaster. We will see. Microsoft is making their own version of the metaverse, and it looks pretty lame too. A bunch of people are betting that we're all going to love this metaverse thing pretty soon, and we're going to see. So, just a couple days ago, Governor Newsom announced that we're going to end all sale of new gasoline cars by 2025 or 2030. And now today they said there's not enough electricity, so he doesn't want you to charge your car this week. So, it does make a sort of funny juxtaposition for the people that hate this whole thing to complain. But that is the case. Just like they don't have enough power in Texas because of all the air conditioners and stuff, and because they're on a separate power grid that's not strong enough, California's grid is not strong enough to power all the electric cars, which draw a lot of power. So they just decided not to shut down our only nuclear plant at Mount Diablo, and clearly we need to build a lot more power plants. And so, that's why I think there's a big tension in America as we all rush towards electric cars. We're not really ready for it, and we're trying to hit the sweet spot of how to move, how fast to move, how fast can you move, because you do have to build a lot more infrastructure. And if you go too fast, then you end up, you've shut down your fossil fuel plants, and you've haven't really spun up enough nuclear or solar or wind to replace them, and now you've got not enough power. So we're lurching back and forth between various motions towards improving our power generation. Well, but fusion electricity is probably not going to come for 10 or 20 years, if then. And geothermal was supposed to be the cure. I see it in chat. It was supposed to be the cure years ago, but it turned out that geothermal caused some awful pollution. I think the water that came out of the earth was full of some nasty chemicals. So when people jumped on that, they thought it would be great, and they eventually decided it wasn't really much of a solution. So solar and wind are pretty good, and nuclear seems to be pretty good for the time being to get us over the hump. Anyway, so this was pretty amazing. They have mice that they can create mice with Down syndrome, and then they were able to relieve them of some of the symptoms, and by replacing some chemical, a gonadotropin relieving hormone, this thing here, they increase that and they get some of their cognition back, because Down syndrome people and mice have trouble thinking, and they tried it in people and it works in preliminary clinical trials. So apparently they can improve the cognition of Down syndrome people, which is pretty amazing and may be very helpful. Yeah, well, we'll see. Everyone's working vigorously on fusion. If fusion becomes practical, that would be nice. But right now they don't even have a prototype fusion that makes more energy than it puts in, not even close. So I think we must be at least 10 or 20 years away from having a fusion plant that you could actually manufacture and sell commercially. We're just in the early prototype stages yet. All right. And so James Webb, I was amazed by this. I remember Caitlin surprised me last couple of weeks ago showing that there was a picture of the face of another star, the surface of it, like to show the sunspots and stuff. I didn't know that had been done. That was done a couple of years ago with a telescope. And now they got a picture of an exoplanet. It's not very high resolution, but this is the surface of an exoplanet about 100 light years away. First time we've ever been able to do that. That is an amazing thing to see. It is, of course, a giant planet, like 10 times bigger than Jupiter, and exceptionally far from its star, but being able to do this at all is an amazing feat. So we can now see the actual surface of some stars and the actual surface of some planets, which is something I never thought we'd be able to do other than by sending a probe to fly over there. So our telescopes are getting very impressive. Anyway, yeah, well, the National Ignition Facility once got a theoretical kind of power out of fusion, but what they did was they technically got more power out from the actual reaction than the power in the reaction, but they didn't even come close to getting as much power out as the power it took to power all the gadgets that were running it. So they say the break-even point that fusion people talk about is just a theoretical abstraction, and it's like a factor of 10 away from the point where you'd actually need to make a commercial reactor. Yeah, I've seen a lot of these fusion things. There are always these fusion articles. They've been coming out for at least 10 or 15 years, always saying that fusion is like 5 years away. And it never seems to actually get any closer. So yeah, that's right. So they made a few steps towards the fusion goal, but you know, there's a good 10 years between that kind of prototype work and an actual plant you can manufacture and use. So TikTok had a flaw. People are getting all excited about it. It sounds like the fairly usual flaw. You can have a crafted URL, which when opened in TikTok would authenticate you as the TikTok user. So then you could take over their TikTok account. This kind of thing happens to almost all web services and apps and such, so people are getting upset about it. But anyway, apparently they found it and fixed it before it got exploited, so this is pretty modest. The only exciting thing, of course, is that so many people use TikTok. A lot of security people avoid TikTok just because they don't like the fact that it's Chinese, and therefore the Chinese government can probably get at the data. But anyway, there was a flaw. And I think that's enough. We're up to 10 minutes after. Let me stop the recording.